Look, I mean, my view is that FIFA are a joke in so many ways. This idea that they're going to do a World Cup every 2 years because it's financial opportunities for them. But on this particular front, this is farcical because whilst we can't get underneath the skin of how these players would have had to quarantine going into Brazil, the prima facie look is they had to quarantine before they could even get into Brazil, so they couldn't even play in these games.
Right. Yeah.
The consequences for the English clubs is that they lose their players coming back for 10 days, which is their objection. The idea that they can ban these clubs, of course, the Brazilian authorities have asked FIFA to bring in the 5-day ban rule, and ultimately FIFA have to comply with that. They could push back, but they'll set a precedent going forward. If I'm the English clubs, I would appeal to CAS, kick it into the long grass, because the resolution to this, what happens if Leeds play, because if these teams play these players, they can be sanctioned. The team that is breaking the rules can be sanctioned and the game forfeited and a 3-0 result awarded to the opposition.
That's right.
Now, if Leeds filled the Brazilian player that they took out of commission and Liverpool filled a Brazilian player, are they going to award 3-0 and to either one of those sides as a default setting? Secondly, if they're going to let Richarlison off, because the Brazilian authorities are saying, we'll let Richarlison off because you allowed Richarlison to play in the Olympics, and we've got goodwill towards you. You can't say, because Everton stopped Richarlison from going. They stopped the player from going in the same way that Liverpool and all the other clubs did. So you're getting into the territory. If I'm these clubs, I'd stick it into CAS, and I'd put it into the long grass, and I'd smooth the ground over. But the real issue, Jim,
is it worth it, Simon?
Yeah,
is it
is.
worth taking it that far?
Sometimes you have to fight for something which is hard to do. You know, years ago when I took Ian Dowie to court for fraudulent misrepresentation because he lied to me and I won, everyone looked at me and went, "Are you mad? Let him go." No, sometimes you have to fight for what you believe in. And if it's fundamentally flawed and wrong that these players have been taken out of commission, domestic football fuels international football, not the other way round. Now, the challenge to that is, the flip side of that argument is, these clubs and the Premier League knew this was coming on top. They knew there was going to be a problem. They're the ones that had the problem because the rules are very clear. You've got to release your players. We know there's exceptions because of the pandemic. So the Premier League perhaps should have sat down and gone, right, what's our problem going to be?
Yeah.
Let's find a resolution rather than wait for the problem to land and think that everything is going to be able to be okay. The clubs are just going to do as they're told. The players are going to do as they're told. Everyone's going to fall in line. It's silly. So really, I think the Premier League are at fault here. But now the resolution is, are you going to let these federations and FIFA do what they're doing, which is ridiculous, to sanction clubs on the basis of players that have to quarantine on the way back and seem to have had to quarantine on the way out? It's just, it's absurd, Jim. It's absurd.
It seems absurd, absolutely absurd. But the punishment's hefty. If they start them anyway this weekend, and you mentioned it there, this is for real. This Article 22 of FIFA's disciplinary code. The clubs that we've listed, Liverpool, Leeds, City, United and Chelsea,
forfeit the match.
If they ignore the rule, the game is indeed forfeited.
But how
3-0.
Okay, then ask the question. If Leeds play the Brazilian player that they didn't let go, and Liverpool don't play the Liverpool player, that's two players playing the same game. Are you going to forfeit the game in favour of both sides? Both sides lose it 3-0. It just brings the game into... They can't do it.
It's ridiculous,
It's ridiculous.
Yeah.
And then you look at the Everton situation, and go back to that point again. Richarlison was not released by Everton, and the Brazilian Federation have gone to FIFA and said, oh, he's okay, we like him, because Everton let him go into the Olympics, which had a completely different set of quarantine parameters at a completely different time of the year. But we like Everton, so we're not going to ask you to sanction Everton. But Everton held their player back. So if I'm the other clubs, I'd be saying, go on then, do that, because we'll use that as a precedent to argue with CAS and say, how can they do one thing for one club because they like that club and not do it for everybody else?
So give me it again. If you're Radrizzani at Leeds, or if you're at the top of the house at City, United or Chelsea, what is your take on this today? What are you doing?
You clearly believe that these players are absolutely fundamental to being available to you for the games back. So you've either got to stick on your position, or you've got to back down. And I would stick, because if you kicked up this fraud in the first place, what's your resolution? Kick it into CAS. By the time CAS have heard this, probably the ground will have been smoothed over by FIFA.
Yeah.
Everyone will be playing nicely for the next international break and trying to find a solution for the next international break. That's what I'd do. I'd put FIFA to the test and go, all right then, let's see if you're going to do this. Let's see if you're going to really enforce this. And the Brazilian Federation, do you really want to separate Everton from Liverpool and Leeds and Manchester City just because they did something nice for you in the Olympics?
As you say, so you would kick it into the long grass for the time being and see if it gets sorted out. But there's not long to wait until the next international break.
I know, but
it's next month.
But where there's a will, there's a way. And what's happened is that people have become entranced in their positions. No one's tried to find a resolution. Everyone's told you what they won't do. No one's told you what they will do. What they won't do is release their players. What we won't do is play them in every single game. What we will do is perhaps, if we're forced to, rather than have this absolute debacle, look to find a pragmatic solution rather than this ridiculous Mexican standoff. Wrong continent, but you understand what I mean.
I know what you're saying. But Brazil have very cutely boxed these clubs into a corner, Simon. Well,
they box themselves in there.
Because they're enforcing the ban.
They box themselves in there. Well, that's only if you believe that particular threat has teeth. You know, we found Man City got sanctioned by UEFA, absolutely sanctioned. They went to CAS, and CAS overturned it. So you look at this and say, okay, is there a principle behind what the clubs are doing? Does that principle impact upon the rule? If the Brazilian Federation are being overly clever by saying to Everton, we like you, they may have boxed themselves into a corner in this particular invoking of a rule, because you can't turn around to say to Everton, we like you because you did something you didn't have to do in the summer by letting Richarlison go to the Olympics for the Brazilian team, but we're going to let you off what everyone else has done.
Yeah.
If they do that, that might be the get-out clause for these guys. But I certainly, if they've made this much of a noise about it, Jim, if they back down now, then they make themselves look silly. If you were going to back down, why don't you just let the bloody players go and get on with it?
Exactly.
So you've got to push it.
So you've got to fight it.
Yeah.